What is the most statistically improbable thing that has happened to you? As a younger teen, I dabbled in golfing. There was a camp and we would go once a week. On the course I was at the fairways of 5 and 6 ran right next to each other except in opposite directions. As I hit my drive on the 6th, a golfer hit his on the 5th. They collided in midair, knocking both our balls on our respective fairways. As a fellow golfer, this is so freaking cool. I actually won one of those McDonald's drawings as a kid. I won a bunch of Barbies. It was pretty great for a 7-year-old. This reminds me of something similar that happened to me as a kid. I won a coloring contest held by a grocery store and, as a prize, got to have breakfast at the Space Needle with Bozo the Clown. But never realized how random that was until now. I went to an amusement park in 1999. Played one of those games where you shoot a basketball and if you get it in the hoop, you win a free basketball. I won the game and I remember picking out the prize ball arbitrarily, just pointing to it. Fast forward to 2011 in college and I find this basketball in my attic with the name of the university I attended, which is over 9 hours away from my hometown. The one time I made that shot was at the state fair, and exactly 0 of the 6 people I was there with saw me make the shot. They thought I randomly stole the Carolina Panthers basketball. In 8th grade we had to film a short movie for a class project and I filmed mine with this kid Ryan. We filmed in this hilly area that looked pretty cool. I'm horrible with directions and didn't even know how to get back to that place. I was 14 so his parents drove us there. Fast forward to my senior year of high school and some friends and I are gonna go poke Smart. My friend drives us to that exact spot and there's another car there. Who is it? Ryan, who I hadn't seen since 8th grade. I was reading about the album Forever Changes by a band called Love. This was around 2007. The album was listed in several top 100 albums lists. In the top 10, I was intrigued as I had never heard of it or them. I found that they were around in the early 60s and from the west coast of the USA. I live in the UK, in a small city that has no significance. So, I call my buddy who has a great taste in music and I say, "What do you think about the Love album? Forever Changes?" He said, "Do you want to go and see them later?" To which I said, "What do you mean?" And lo and behold, they were playing a tiny venue that very night in my tiny city. What are the chances of that? Low, not low. I won a video camera at a Toronto Blue Jays game when I was like 9. They called my seat number out of like 50,000 seats. I once thought to myself on a long walk home, with all the people that do drugs, why don't they drop them more, and secondly, why don't I ever find said drop drugs? Well, don't you know if 2 minutes later I look down and find a bag full of weed sitting on the ground. I reconsidered my faith for a few minutes. Best thing I can think of is, I was locking the door to my apartment and the key broke in half inside the lock. I went to Walmart to buy some pliers and I locked my keys inside my car. Eventually got my car unlocked with the help of some incredibly nice strangers. Went home and locked my keys inside my car again. At a school fair in middle school there was a kiddie pool full of goldfish. Guess the amount and get a free goldfish. There was over 1,000 and I guessed the number exactly. Then, when I was scooping my prize I happened to scoop 2 goldfish. I named them Cleo and Patra. It got awkward when Cleo died first, leaving just Patra. My wife and I honeymooned in Seattle back in 2013. While walking out of a restaurant, I see my favorite high school teacher from Kansas walking into it. Small world. We're French. When I was 16 and my sister 12, my dad took us for a month in the US. We spent some time in LA, in SF, visited a bunch of national parks and ended the trip with a week in New York. My dad had booked rooms in a small hotel. Hi, we have a reservation under last name. Yeah, hi, 2 people, right? No, there are 3 of us. Oh, sorry, the ledger says 2, but I'll find you an extra room. No problem. They show us the rooms. We're settling in when we hear someone knocking. My little sister opens the door. An older man and a woman stand there, mouth agape. We just were at the desk. We had a reservation for 2 but the guy told us we were already booked in these rooms here. I said we obviously weren't and it had to be some kind of mix up. I notice my dad has turned white. It was his dad and stepmom. his estranged dad and stepmom, whom he hadn't seen or talked to in 20 years. The hotel had 2 bookings under our and my paternal grandfather's last name, one for 3 people and one for 2, for the same 7 nights. We ended up spending the week with them, reconnecting. It didn't really heal the relationship. My grandfather was not a good person, but my sister and I got to know our grandfather and step-grandmother. I was living in New York and went on vacation to the Bahamas. I met a friend during the trip from Boston. A few years later, I was walking down the street in Amsterdam and ran into the same friend. This happened when I was like 7-8. So I was playing baseball in a league called coach pitch. I played the pitcher position even though the opposing team's coach would pitch to them. I was probably the worst kid on the team. I couldn't throw far. I couldn't catch good, so it's like a filler spot. So one game I was daydreaming with my hands up in the air and all of a sudden I felt a lot of force push into my glove. Keep in mind I was in no way paying attention to the batter or the ball. Everyone was scream cheering, even the opposing team's parents. I caught a line drive of a ball that had a lot of power behind it and I wasn't even looking. So I finally looked down into my glove and noticed I caught the ball. It was so surreal. The opposing coach came up to me saying great catch. It was pretty crazy for me. I caught a bird mid-flight after I told my friend I was going to catch a bird mid-flight. We were walking down the street after just smoking a joint and there was this flock of small yellow and black birds in the bushes about 30 feet ahead of us. I nonchalantly said, "Watch this, I'm going to catch a bird." When we got a few feet closer, the flock of birds took wing, flying in our general direction. One little bird ended up flying almost directly at me, at which time I flung out my hand and snatched this little bird mid-flight. I was nearly as shocked as the little guy. I gently put him down on the grass beside the road, checked to make sure he was okay, then watched as he took off to join his little birdie buddies. Laughter and much mirth ensues from myself and friend. While riding my motorcycle on a public roadway at 6 AM, I collided with another motorcyclist. I ask other motorcyclists this question all the time, and I've never encountered a single other rider who's been in a bike-on-bike collision on public roads and survived, obviously. I was born with little or no anterior pituitary gland. That is why I am short, because it makes HGH. Little did I know until a few years ago that was the cause of and the solution to all my problems. In my AP Bio class, there was a free response calculation that I had absolutely no idea how to do, so I just put a random decimal with practically no thought to it. The answer ended up being like 0.833. I guessed 0.833. I could guess an infinite amount of other numbers, but I guessed 0.833. I was so confused. I grew up in AZ and followed some friends out to TX about 5 years ago. My friends out here mention a guy they knew in high school was coming out to visit. I knew of him, but never really met him. We get to talking about crappy jobs and he mentions being a financial aid counselor at University of Phoenix. I too was an FC. He mentions a particularly bad manager, one I recognized. Turns out that I was the guy who took his job 7 years beforehand. Could have been awkward, but neither cared because it was a terrible place to work. I too was an FC. I was watching the support act at a Foo Fighters concert and caught a guitar picking between my fingers with my arms folded. Couldn't do that again if I tried. I have 3 that all came from living in a van, climbing tour around Europe. This post is going to be a little long. Apologies. Me and my van buddy go down to Spain and one evening we meet this Australian couple. One of them is trying this route that my mate is interested in and we talk a bit. We see them once more I think before we have to back to the UK for Christmas. 6 weeks later we are back in Spain but a few hundred miles further south. We arrive in the afternoon after 3 full days of driving, so just chill out. The next day as I've got my head under the bed getting my stuff, my mate says the Aussies are here. They literally drove past just then. Turns out they had rented an apartment in the nearest town. We got to know them really well over the next 6 weeks or so and they let us borrow their shower. An awesome coincidence. The next one happened when we staying not too far away at a place called Cellar, and my friend again saw one of our friend's ex-girlfriends and they gave us some food. Fast forward 2 months and we are in northern France now, and our friend whose ex we saw walks past our van. Not as good as the first, but it sort of leads on to the last one. Just after that encounter, a guy who owned the car parked next to us returns from his day of climbing and asks us if we had recently spent some time at Cellar. We are a bit puzzled and say we have. He laughs at us and says he thought so because he saw us months ago at Cellar and he recognized our super rusty van. Hope it was worth your while reading all that crap. Getting pregnant. I'm subfertile and so is my so. We were told that we were unlikely to have children. We now have a son and a daughter through pure luck. And, yak now. They took a long time to get here, but they were definitely worth the wait. I once found a gold diamond ring just laying on the ground. Left ads in the paper for a small lost item of value. Months went by and nobody was able to describe it. Sold it for $500 and bought a Game Boy Advance SP. I think I was 12. I found a loose diamond on the pavement once. Good spot. Got £500 for it. One time I was flipping a quarter and accidentally flipped it really far forward instead of up. The quarter then proceeded to land in my friend's tight jeans pocket without him even noticing. It just perfectly caught the edge and slipped in. I once took my 3 older nephews on a hiking trip to Big Sur, California. We had a long hike ahead of us, so we began to talk about our favorite movies, books, jokes, etc. I began to tell them of my favorite book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I explained the overall plot of the story and they seemed quite interested. Fast forward a few hours and we've hiked nearly 3,000 feet up a series of hills. The view of the Pacific Ocean is spectacular. As we near the peak of the highest hill, I notice something stuck in a bush. As I approach the bush, I can see that the object is a weather-worn paperback book. Reaching into the bush, I retrieved the book, which has the back cover facing me, and joke that it's probably The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It was. When I turned the book over to look at the cover, I had a cold chill come over me and I was truly speechless. I sat there dumbfounded for a moment since I couldn't even imagine the odds of something like that happening. Infinite improbability drive, indeed. I was scooping ice cream and I put too much force into it and the ice cream blob flew into the air about 6 inches and landed perfectly in my bowl. That was pretty crazy. A few years ago I pulled the boardwalk piece for McDonald's Monopoly. I put it in my safe in my apartment and left for vacation to New York the next day, keeping it safe until I got home to turn it in. When I returned a week later, the apartment had been robbed, safe broken into, with about $400 and my $1 million piece gone. There was no $1 million winner in 2011. Boring but true. I played an online roulette table starting with £0 and 20 pence and got to £28 by doubling and then quit. I only ever bought 2 scratch cards. The first cost £2 and gave me £10. The second cost £1 and I won £5. I have never, and will never gamble again. I profited from gambling, a statistical improbability. I grew up in West Virginia. I was living in very rural Nicaragua for a few months when I was 18. At the end of my stay, my host mother showed me the family photo album. This village not having a camera, most photos were either from hired photographers during weddings, baptisms, etc., or shots from some white visitor who brought a camera and sent a photo back. It was very clear that photos were treasured, and none of them were ever discarded. Every shot was virtually the same people, same place, etc., except for the very last photo in the album. When I saw it, my jaw hit the floor. 2 white kids in Oshkosh overalls outside of some brick house clearly not set in Nicaragua. It was the same photo that my mother has on our refrigerator of me and my sister at ages 4 and 6. I was born with this condition called Pyloric Stenosis. It's not all that uncommon, but what happened when they fixed it is, they basically had to slice me open and cut one of my muscles so it would stop squeezing the lower part of my stomach intestines. Thing is, something went wrong, and my heart stopped. 3 times. They fixed all that up and left me on life support so I wouldn't keel over and die. Then they found out that when they intubated, they collapsed one of my 2 good lungs. I like to think I'm unique. One of my two good lungs. The way you phrase that makes it sound like you have other non-functioning lungs. I would have led with that in a post about statistically improbable things. I had a baby at 16. I graduated high school early, went to college, have a master's degree and am married, first and only, with 3 more children. My daughter has always lived with me and she will graduate with GOITs from her bachelor's program this spring. I was sitting across the table from my grandpa. The table in question had a oak leaf that inserted into the center. It left a 1mm or so gap due to the age of the wood, warping, etc. He asked to see the list my mom had made me, so I slid it towards him. The paper, having been rolled up slightly, caught some wind, flipped 270 degrees, and went right through the tiny crack in the table, landing on the floor. I outran a canine dog. I'm also white. For those asking, I had a 50 featuring head start before the officer let the dog out of the car, at which point sheer terror and adrenaline gave me the legs of Forrest Gump. I was trying to take something that wasn't mine and got caught red-handed. I call bulls. White people aren't pursued by the cops. They just show up at your house or job. This happened to a friend of mine years ago. We worked together at a pizza place as delivery drivers. Now just about everyone in a kitchen smokes pot, so he asks one of the cooks if he could hook him up with a bag. Cook says no problem, makes a call and tells my buddy to go to an address at a certain time and they will sell you a bag. So my friend goes to the address at the time and rings the bell. Dude answers and my friend was like, so and so sent me, said you could help me out. Dude invites him and smokes a bowl and sells him a bag. As he was driving home, the cook calls him and tells him he fricked up the address and not to go. Turns out my friend essentially went to a random house, asks for weed and gets smoked up. I was pooped on by birds 4 times in one day, all different locations and while moving. 3 times while walking and once while driving. Moonroof. I don't know what I did to pee off all those birds, but dang if they didn't have great aim. There's this business competition I'm involved in that allows teams from schools across the province to compete with each other. DECA. The top 6 in each category get to proceed to the international level. At provincials, my partner and I were not called up as part of the top 6, so we assumed we weren't going, but our roommates were 3rd. Then my teacher told us that one of the top 6 couldn't go and we were actually in 7th place, so we got to go. We later found out that the team that couldn't go was made up of our roommates. As someone who's in DECA who knows how it works, that's pretty impressive. I was playing D&D with some friends one time and my buddy was just sitting there rolling dice while we were waiting for something. He had 2 20-sided dice and rolled doubles 4 times in a row. We did the math and it was unbelievable, the odds. I was born white, Canadian, middle class, raised in an open-minded family, found out I was trans and have been able to transition with little impediment on any front and no rejection from anyone in my family. Despite being open about being trans, I have faced no violence, very little social stigma, and no negativity. I was traveling to Asia and I was getting my vaccinations, malaria, typhoid, etc. And the next day I developed a weird rash at the injection site. Then little mosquito bite looking bumps began to pop up all over my arm. I quickly read the pamphlet about side effects and it said something like 80% will feel soreness at site of injection, 10% get flu-like symptoms, then at the end there was 0.05% developed a skin rash on the arm of injection. So I was the lucky 0.05%. I ran into my best friend from growing up while browsing a comic book shop. We were both looking for the same series. We hadn't seen each other in years. This comic book shop was in Seattle. We grew up together in Mississippi. With no college education whatsoever, I had a brief career working for a handful of new media startups in New York City, mostly working alongside people who had at the very least a master's degree. That only lasted a few years before petering out though. I was born with Trevor's disease, which is 1 in a million. I'm a girl and it has a boy-girl ratio of 3:1, so it's even more improbable. I actually came across my ex on a P site with no intention of looking for her. Just saw a thumbnail I liked, clicked it, bam. There's your ex, bro. Have fun blocking that out. There are just things you were never meant to know. We were playing Risk and my brother took Australia again, he always does, and I had a reasonable sized army ready to assault it. Well, long story short, he rolled 9x6s in a row with the same 3x die I was using to attack. I rolled far worse. This may sound mundane, but the odds of this are roughly 1/6, 9, or 0.000000992%. Pretty unreal IMHO. I rolled the dice 32 times in a row at a craps table in Reno without crapping out. I highly doubt this is the most statistically improbable thing that happened to me, but I did win a t-shirt. When I was in middle school, my mum bought me a combination lock for my school locker. A week later, at a different store, she bought me another combo lock. Same model, this time for my gym locker. The combos turned out to be 93917 and 83816. They were close enough that I could use the same combo for both. This was great until both my lockers hot broken into. Met, dated, married and devoted to so. Not improbable. What is improbable? She is the only one I've gotten a number from. Asked out, dated, and married. The only person I've ever been with. She is my high school sweetheart. Really, I could go into detail and I've been told it sounds like a fairy tale. But yeah, very improbable. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.